Our next presenter is Bronwyn Barnes, the Director and President and CEO of HPX Mines.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'd like to recognise the delegation that's here from Guinea today. Welcome, bienvenue en Australie, ça fait longtemps que vous n'êtes pas ici. And it's my pleasure to be working back in Guinea. So I went back to work with HPX around 2 years ago, but prior to that I had been Deputy CEO of a bauxite operation in Guinea for a number of years. So look, I love being in Guinea. It's a great place to work. You know, the opportunities are amazing, but I think the people are even more amazing. So, bienvenue. Let me introduce you to HPX. A lot of you may not instantly recognise the name, but you may recognise the name behind the company, and you may well recognise the project. So HPX is an entity called High Powered Exploration. We are actually a US company, and we are backed by Robert Friedland. So there might be some of you in the room who remember Robert Friedland purchased the Nimba iron ore project from BHP, commencing in 2018 with the transaction completed in 2019. Robert is obviously behind iPulse, which is our major shareholder, currently sitting at around 54%. Ivanhoe Capital also is Robert's private investment vehicle, and Robert is very strongly connected to this project. And I recently led with him a rights issue for existing shareholders where we raised another $50 million US to be able to continue to take Nimba forward into development. We are currently a private vehicle, and so we have been spending Robert's money quite successfully for the past couple of years, but we are planning to list on the ASX in Q1 2025. So we really believe that this is an asset that will resonate very strongly with the Australian investment community. There's clearly a strong understanding of iron ore in Australia, but also the efforts of Rio Tinto at Simandou is very much raising the profile of West African iron ore assets. So as a US company, we have a very strong US leaning in terms of our board. So we have Peter Pham as our chairman, is the first US ambassador for the Sahel. So he has a long history in working in State Department and in West Africa. And other US directors are Robin Sandenberg, who is very strongly recognised for her efforts around international sustainability, particularly for the development of African projects. Our London corporate office and project team, you can see there, I lead that team in London. Today we've also got in the room Kevin McLean, who's our Chief Operations Officer. Some of you might know Kevin. He was previously with Fortescue and led the rail and port and mine development for Fortescue in the early days. And Joe McDonald is also our Head of BD and Strategy, and we're all on the booth for the duration of Africa Down Under. Just moving on to Conquini. So Conquini is our highest grade undeveloped hematite deposit in the world, located in Guinea, and we're very focused on creating a long-term sustainable mining development in Guinea. So the project is owned 85% by HPX and 15% by the Government of Guinea. It is a world-class resource with a total resource of 750 million tonnes of DSO. We are focused on phase one of the Nimba deposit, which is the Conquini deposit, of 210 million tonnes of a high-grade resource that is running at about 67.8%. And we see that that's a particularly attractive product in the market to date, and it's in an excellent location for us. So you can see on the map here that we're quite separate from the Simandou project, and we're not proposing to utilise the Simandou railway line that is currently being constructed to service the Simandou iron ore project. So where Conquini is located is in the southern part of Guinea, in the Nzukure region of Guinea. It's very close to the border of Liberia, as you can see on the map. So we've the plan for phase one is construction of a short road of circa 50 kilometres that connects the site to the existing rail line head in Tokada. So the Tokada to Port of Buchanan railway line is in existence. It's an asset that's owned by the government of Liberia. It's currently operated by ArcelorMittal, and their mineral development agreement, which grants them the right to operate that rail line, is due to expire in the next few years. We are working with the government of Liberia on a rail access agreement. Those negotiations have been underway for a number of years. We look forward to bringing that to conclusion in the next few weeks. So there's been a significant effort put into negotiations with the new government of Liberia that took office in February of this year. And we currently have a final draft rail access agreement sitting with the Interministerial Concessions Committee in Monrovia. And once that's approved, that will go to the President for endorsement, and then it goes to the Legislature for ratification. So look, our initial plan is to connect to the existing rail infrastructure and to export out through the existing port of Buchanan. We do have a longer term vision for the project. Over time, we will ramp up to a 30 million tonne per annum operation, and I'll run through a little bit later in the presentation how we plan to do that. We do have low cash costs, and it's a low capital intensity. The infrastructure will be separated from the mine, and it will be done separately through a public-private partnership. We do have a mining convention in place, and we have a presidential decree that has been signed that gives us the right to export through Liberia. And we also have a treaty signed between both countries, between Guinea and Liberia, agreeing to the export of that product. So in terms of operation, we clearly have the project and corporate office in London. There's about 12 people there. We currently have around 200 employees at Nimba at site, and we have another 5 employees down in our Monrovia office. We've got a very strong commitment to local employees and local content. At the moment, we have 100% local employment within our sites. And we're very keen. We have completed our contract tendering process for construction of phase one. That was a contract tendering process that was only published in French, and it was only published in Guinea. And we have selected a preferred local contractor to be able to take forward construction. I think that we're very blessed in Guinea. It's obviously, over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, has had a significant development of its bauxite sector. There's a very strong contracting and supply base in Guinea that is focused around supporting, large bulk and logistics, developments and operations. So we're very comfortable that there's a deep talent pool inside Guinea that will be able to support the project. So let's just talk about Conquini and the fast track to production. So our first phase one that we're looking at is obviously the small open pit mining operation. We're starting off at 2 million tonnes per annum and ramping up to 5 million tonnes over a few years. It's a very simple mining operation. And I think, coming from a background of Western mining, we always used to look at the Pilbara iron ore operations and say that they weren't mining at all. They were actually just gardening operations with a very sophisticated logistics chain attached to it. And I think that's very much the situation here for the operations in Guinea. So as I said, we will be, trucking to the Tokada railhead and then railing down to the port of Buchanan, and we're looking at delivering a very high-grade product to market. So final investment decision is slated for Q1 of 2025, and we should be nearing completion of construction at the end of 2025, depending on the rainy season, but it's definitely the plan to be in production by Q1 2026. So we're working through the final contract tendering process and locking down the CapEx for phase one. We are completing the ESIA process now, and we should be on track to also have that complete at the end of Q1, 2025, to be able to then move into construction very early in the year as well. But phase two is our ramp-up phase. We would like to ramp up to 30 million tonnes per annum, but in order to do that, we will require an expansion of infrastructure, and this is where we have a much bigger vision for the project that I'd like to run you through. So a lot of, bulk and mining logistics in Africa is all DSO. And what we'd really like to do with Nimba is look at a downstream processing hub. We believe that there's an opportunity here with the right kind of infrastructure and the right kind of operating costs to introduce a green steel hub into West Africa and to have a downstream processing facility that can look to upgrade some of the regional deposits that are lower grade that are currently sitting there underutilised. So we've started planning for the Lola Processing Hub, and what it really will depend upon is this access to power and access to good rail and road and port transport. So one of the things that we've looked at in that region of both, or the Nimba region of both Guinea and Liberia, is that there are significant deposits there that are much lower grade. Now, if they're not beneficiated, they will remain trapped in country, and they're resources that then can't be developed for the benefit either of a company or for the broader country. So we are doing a research process at the moment. Those of you who've seen Robert Friedland's commitment to technology and research will know that he has a very high interest in advancing mining through the use of new technologies and disruptive technologies. And so we are working through a process internally at HPX concurrently with the development plans for Nimba to also progress the Lola processing hub. And this would be the first West African downstream processing hub for iron ore. And it's something that we're very committed to as a company, and we think that there's a real place for downstream processing to happen in Africa and to stop the just wholesale export of ore without any beneficiation or value add. And the key to unlocking the Lola industrial hub for us is very much the Liberty Corridor. Now, the Liberty Corridor is a concept that has been born out of the need to increase production capacity at Nimba to 30 million tonnes over time. The current rail line could probably take somewhere between 10 and 15 million tonnes, and with ArcelorMittal, peaking at about 5 million tonnes per annum, and ourselves then also peaking at 5, that corridor becomes very crowded very quickly, and there's no room for other users. So we have been working on the concept of a multi-user infrastructure corridor that would be expansion of the existing infrastructure that runs between Tokada and the Port of Buchanan. And so that would involve extending the existing rail line through to the Nimba-Lola region. It would involve the construction of a new port at Didier. This is a Didier port site that's already been earmarked by the Government of Liberia as part of their longer-term planning solutions. That there would be an expansion of the existing West African power pool from Tokada through into the Nimba district. Now, the West African power pool network is the hydroelectric scheme that runs from Côte d'Ivoire, and of course, if we're extending that into the Nimba district, that really supports the green downstream processing of iron ore. There would be a refurbishment of the existing rail, and over time that could be upgraded to a dual track, so we would duplicate the line. And our initial research shows us that there's between 4 and 5 billion tonnes of iron ore within trucking distance of the Liberty Corridor in both the Guinea and Liberian sides of the border. On the Liberian side of the border, we have just recently acquired another asset. It's called the St John River asset. That transaction has just completed this week. That's another potential iron ore project that sits halfway down the line towards the Port of Buchanan. And it's an old BHP asset that has a target resource there of 650 million tonnes. So we will be expanding our exploration efforts into Liberia as well. And I certainly think that there's the opportunity to bring in other assets on the Ghanaian side of the border, not only into the Lola processing hub, but also into the Liberty Corridor development. So we have signed a letter of intent with the Government of Liberia for the development of the Liberty Corridor. We have a drafted development agreement with the Government of Liberia that is now being signed off by the Interministerial Concessions Committee. and that will also need to go to the legislature for ratification. Our priority, however, is to focus on Nimba development of phase 1, so securing rail access for our first 2 to 5 million tonnes, and then advancing with the Liberty Corridor over time to support our expansion plans. As a US company with US advocacy status, we have received significant support from the US government. Definitely, State Department and Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and also MEGA is obviously our project insurer, and we've had significant discussions with the World Bank. I think when talking about the Liberty Corridor, it's also important to note the Lobito Corridor, which is another infrastructure corridor backed by the US government that connects Angola and DRC, is another development where Ivanhoe Mines is the cornerstone customer. So this is very much a model that we would like to follow inside the Ivanhoe Empire. So, where are we at with our project? Obviously, we're well advanced towards making a final investment decision in the next 6 to 9 months. We do have a development plan for Nimba that addresses the environmental values of the Nimba mountain range. I haven't gone into detail in the presentation today on our community and environmental benefits, but as an international company, I think that's now a standard expectation that these things happen, and we don't necessarily need to delve into them every time we take the podium. These things should just happen as a matter of course. We really love the idea of being one of the first downstream processors in West Africa for value adding to iron ore, and we certainly see that the Liberty Corridor could unlock that value in the future, not only for us, but also for the governments of Guinea and Liberia. So thank you very much for your time today. Obviously, we've reached the end of my time, and we are here at the booth, on booth 55, very happy to have a conversation. As I said, we are aiming to list on the ASX in Q1 of 2025, so that will be Friedland's first venture back into Australia for a number of years, and we are interested in looking at other development assets that line up with the US critical minerals supply list. So we're always happy to talk to other project proponents that might be looking for some assistance, be that either financial or technical. So thank you very much for your time.